I don't share a lot of personal photos here on Weekly 50. Mostly, I use this as an exercise to continue practicing and learning and growing when it comes to my photography. But I don't use it as a place to share photos of my kids or photos of my trips, or at least not in the strictest sense, not in like, look at this restaurant and look at this food I ate. I will take photos on trips and then share them if they're part of that broad spectrum of learning photography. But in this case, I think the photo itself is I don't know, it's not bad. It's fine. I shot this with my Fuji X100F. I shot it in RAW, which I almost never do on that Fuji. That is like almost a strictly JPEG camera. And it's really just for photos of, that's what I use for like everyday captures, especially when we go on trips. And this is Minnehaha Falls in the Twin Cities. I forget if it's in St. Paul or Minnesota or Minneapolis or another suburb, but it's in the Twin Cities. And it's winter, and it's kind of this idyllic winter scene. There's this stream going through the photo. There's a stone bridge. There's not a lot of human activity. There is if you look closely, obviously there's a building in the background. There's railings on staircases. So there's some interesting elements from a photography perspective. But what is more interesting to me is my personal connection to this. My wife and I lived in Minneapolis, or technically St. Paul. We lived in the Twin Cities when we were first married. And I've got family up there, which is why we were up there. It was for a wedding. And we don't get back to the Twin Cities very often. And this time we were able to take our kids with, and we saw some people we don't get to see very often, and go to some places that we just don't get to very often anymore, including Minnehaha Falls, which my wife and I used to enjoy going to walk around at and hike along this stream that eventually goes to the Mississippi River. It was just a really nice place for us to go and spend time when we lived up there. And then to be back and to bring our kids with. And we had a friend with us too, one of our longtime friends who lives in the area. It was this singular experience that we don't get very often. But the fact that it was in winter and the waterfall, which you can't see, was frozen over entirely. And this whole scene in some ways was familiar, but because we'd been here many times, but also completely different because it was covered in snow. It was also extremely cold. We almost never get cold like this here in Oklahoma, but it was just, in a lot of ways, it was like just another winter's day up in the Twin Cities. So there's a lot of personal elements to this photo that you can't really tell just by looking at it, but it has this extra meaning to me that, I don't know, I don't often have on Weekly 50 because I kind of just keep that side of my photography for me and for my wife and family and friends. But this has a little bit of both. In fact, the personal connection is actually, in kind of a rare move, more important than the artistic element or the photography growth and learning element. But I hope you enjoy it. If you've never been up to this part of the country, I recommend it. It's great. The people are great. The weather is great. And if it's too cold, just dress warmer. It's just a really neat place to go and visit or live if you're fortunate enough to be able to do that.